HeadphonesNeil here, back with my next initial thoughts review video. So for today's review, it's going to be episode 4 of Kenobi, which is essentially going to be a big throwback review. So if you haven't seen the episode, then definitely watch it first because there will be spoilers in this review. So overall, when you watch this episode, it is an episode that mimics a lot of the scenes that we see from episode 4, A New Hope. So I don't know if they did that on purpose or like a clever little Easter egg to have Kenobi episode 4 match episode 4, A New Hope. But once you finish watching it and once you've watched this review or listen to this review, you'll definitely, I hope that you'll see the same things that I did. So essentially what we have, Kenobi, the Sand Snake Mother, and basically going to the Fortress Inquisitorius to rescue Leia. They meet up with some other rebels. We get a little bit more backstory of the impact of the Inquisitors going after Force-sensitive users and the impact that it has on their families. We have the Sand Snake Mother breaking into the Inquisitor Fortress to guide Obi-Wan through the fortress. So the biggest issue that we have here, or the biggest issue I had here, was it seemed like the Fortress Inquisitorius officers don't know that the Grand Inquisitor is dead as of yet. So when you're watching this episode, it seemed not necessarily easy, but it seemed easy enough for the Sand Snake Mother to use her code, which I guess was supposedly watching some review videos that was supposed to be a scene to mimic what we saw in Return of the Jedi. But I kind of missed that, so when I rewatch the episode, I'm definitely going to pay attention to that a little bit more. But from here, this is where we get more and more callbacks to the film. So we have Obi-Wan entering the Fortress Inquisitorius in the same way that he and Qui-Gon entered Ota Gunga in episode 1 by using a rebreather and swimming into the fortress underwater. The comparison that I forgot about was this also mimicked the scene from Jedi Fallen Order, the video game, when Cal Kestis enters the fortress via the underwater entry. So there is that as well. Beyond this, we have Obi-Wan sneaking around the facility, much like we see in episode 4 when he's sneaking around the Death Star to deactivate the tractor beam, but in this case, he's searching for Leia. Next up, and in basically the same sequence, we have him using his little pinch noise distraction technique from the Death Star, but an earlier version here, to distract the stormtrooper so he can go in a different direction. So you get to see a lot of the same parallels here. And then ultimately he finds Leia, they make their escape, they get detected by a security sentry droid, and ultimately they start getting chased by stormtroopers. So much like the escape that we see of Han, Leia, and Luke, is that once they get discovered, now they're fighting their way through stormtroopers to get to the Millennium Falcon. And then to round out the comparisons, we have Vader making a dramatic entrance, getting very, very angry and upset at the third sister at what we're led to believe is her failure at letting them escape. But as it turns out, she's placed a tracer, tracker, or whatever in Lola, Leia's droid, to track Obi-Wan and Leia to the rest of wherever they end up going, to keep tabs on wherever they're going, much like Vader places a tracker on the Falcon to track them to the Rebel base. So essentially it feels like they're retroactively filling in some of the stuff we see in episode 4, and especially with how Vader uses the tracker trick from the Inquisitor program like we saw here to track the rebels in episode 4. So initially you would think that this is a lot of what happened in Young Indiana Jones, where they're putting all of the stuff we see in all of Indiana Jones's fears, of like his fear of snakes, using the whip, getting the hat, and all of that all into one show. But it also feels like they implemented this very well without shoving it down your throat. So when Obi-Wan is sneaking around the base, it kind of makes sense that on the Death Star he would know about how to use the systems, because at some point he would have had to use an Imperial facility and be familiar with it. So this episode solves that. Using the little trick of making the noise seems like a simple enough trick to just push something that's far away and to make a noise to distract the stormtroopers. So he's granted probably not smart or powerful enough yet to get into the stormtroopers' minds to distract them, like we see on Tatooine in A New Hope. So that's why he uses this little trick here and finds that it's a convenient thing to use on the Death Star to kind of mask his presence from Vader, which doesn't work, but use this as a way to continue sneaking around the Death Star and avoiding the stormtroopers. So that's really the bulk of that from my initial watching of the episode. So overall, it was a very good episode. Definitely a lot shorter than the past 3 episodes, with a runtime of about 38 minutes with credits. So maybe about 33 or 34 minutes, without the credits. But they do pack enough in. Essentially, it's a Leia rescue episode. I presume in the next episode we're going to get her back to Alderaan, so we'll see what happens in episode 5. But that's essentially what this episode was about. Getting into the fortress was difficult enough. Snapsnake Mother having to get around the initial docking officer and then getting discovered while she's using the computer. I want to assume that the guy the guy in the terminal near her overheard her and alerted some officer to what she was doing, that something is amiss with this lady, which is probably why that guy showed up and could have caused a problem. But I'm going to rewatch that scene just to see how that plays itself out. But it was basically a small scene. It didn't seem like it made any sense, but it also seemed like he could have overheard what Snake Mother was telling Obi-Wan and suspected that something was up. So overall, a good episode. Of course, with the end of the episode, we do have a rescue scene with some A-Wings, which is a definite callback or tie into episode 5 from Hoth. So I guess they are, I don't know, I don't want to say they're waterproof, but I guess they're like the cold atmosphere is not suited for them, but normal conditions are. I also want to say, just spitballing and off the top of my head right now, the end sequence with the A-Wing falling into the ocean, that arc kind of reminded me of the episode 1 sequence when the Naboo starfighters are initially leaving the base to go after the Federation ships, and one of them falls over the side into the water, is kind of a parallel scene in my opinion. So I'm going to pay more attention to some of those scenes when I rewatch the episode, but in my initial watch through, episode 4 or part 4 of Kenobi definitely has a lot of tie-ins to episode 4 A New Hope. So definitely a good episode, albeit short, but a good progression to show that to finish up Leia's rescue and to show that we have Obi-Wan recovering more of his force powers, being able to more easily wield his lightsaber. Granted, they were just stormtroopers, but at least there was that. A very angry Vader, but we see him coming around to the Third Sister's abilities, and that while the Inquisitors are vying for the Grand Inquisitor position, Reva, or Third Sister, might be a lot smarter than she seems to compensate for her other shortfallings or she might be doing more than everyone is letting on. So she might actually be the smarter of the Inquisitors of the group. So that's all there is for this update, review, and thoughts and all of that. So this week's podcast will have a more hashed out review, and that'll also give me a chance to watch the episode again to hopefully pick up on some other stuff that I might have missed. But I wanted to get this out for everybody just to share what my initial impressions were of the episode. So thanks for tuning into this episode. Of course, the website is HeadphonesNeil.reviews for the podcast subscription link supporting the show. This video can be found on Twitch at twitch.tv/HeadphonesNeil, on YouTube at youtube.com/PatelN01, and you can always provide your feedback by commenting on the post or commenting on my Twitter profile or the Twitter post at PatelN01. So thanks for tuning into this particular review, and until next time.